Welcome back to Chumming with the Spirits. We got OG, Jason, the Professor, OG, and Numbnuts here.
And JD.
We got JD
just
down
way
there.
over here.
Did I not say JD?
No, you said
OG twice.
JD, Jason, the
There's one for each one
Professor,
of your guns.
OG, and Numbnuts Parachum here. We wanted to kind of talk about tonight the paranormal and specifically spirit boards and board spirits. So let's go at it.
I'll take it away because I brought it up.
All right, here we go.
I don't know how I feel about the Professor. I appreciate why you guys call me that, but
Because you're a genius.
I don't know how I feel about it. But so I posted on the Casey Paracon page a picture of a couple friends of mine using a Ouija board, and it came up. Some people commented on it, and I had some thoughts on it overall and the use of it. But first, I want to get an idea of how you guys individually feel about Ouija boards and spirit boards, because they are essentially the same thing.
Mumbling or no mumbling?
Go for it. See what happens.
Okay. So, you guys don't mind me jumping in here, do you?
No.
No, hop in. Water's warm.
So, I do admit that I have a problem, besides alcohol.
Oh, okay.
That when I get personally terrified, that I mumble to myself and don't realize that I'm mumbling to myself.
And when did
we find that out?
At the Malvern Manor.
With a
spirit board. But I have to admit, we have done, personally, you and I have done spirit board sessions in multiple locations, and I have to admit, the Whiteface House, I wasn't necessarily terrified when we were doing that, because we didn't really hear anything.
Yeah.
But we got some pretty damning evidence that something was trying to talk to us.
Yeah.
How so?
We'll get into that, but first thoughts before we go into details.
Okay.
First thought on the use of spirit boards, Ouija boards, is the colloquial term for a reason, because it's a brand name. Most people are afraid of it. How do you feel about a spirit board session specifically?
I personally look at it as it's a piece of cardboard and plastic. Your intentions are the same using a spirit board as they are using a voice recorder, K2 meter, anything like that in the paranormal, because even though you're asking the spirit to move the, what is it called? Planchette?
Yeah,
on the
there
spirit.
You go.
Thank you. On the spirit board, when you're doing an EVP session or K2 meter, typically you're holding it in your hands. You're asking the spirit to manipulate that piece of equipment just the same as you are with a spirit board.
And that's part of my argument, and we can dive into that. You guys, Dave, how do you feel about Ouija boards and spirit boards?
So, being the most senior person here, I can tell you I'm the first guy that used a Ouija board in this room.
Yeah, because you were born before us.
It's exactly. So back when I was a young lad, much young, probably 7, my mom bought us a Ouija board for Christmas, because that was the big thing in the 70s. And
you got the Hasbro edition, first edition.
And it was a real board too, by the way.
Well, first edition was like 1912.
Yeah. So not that old.
Not by Hasbro.
It was Mattel.
Hasbro.
It was Parker Brothers.
Yeah. So that was probably the one we got, and I was like,
did it glow in the dark?
No.
You're lame.
That was back then. Things did not glow in the dark.
So we played with it when we were kids, and we just
I played with a lot of things when I was a kid.
So reflecting on that, I do agree with what you're saying, but to me, it is still taboo-ish.
So you're saying it's more intention than it is?
We'll get into that.
Okay. Sorry.
My personal take on the Ouija board, spirit boards, is Hasbro and that one. It is not the same as a K2 meter. It is not the same as a recorder, because you have to let the spirits influence you to move the planchette. Now, if you're hands off and letting the planchette move by itself, which is way more impressive if it does.
You're right.
But the minute you have to put your hands on it, you have too much influence from yourself, other people, and also you're inviting a spirit to move your hands, which is, it's one thing to say use my energy and also use my body, as we've had this discussion before. So there are some caveats with it. I mean, could it be a tool? Yes. The history of it makes a lot of sense, because you had mediums and conduits of people that they believed it was easy for them to move through.
So what are your guys' thoughts?
Let me make my thought.
Yeah.
There
is 4 of us.
I know there is.
I will make the argument after more discussion that I feel that through the life of paranormal investigation, based on the use of it and the statistics, that it might be the safest overall communication device that's ever been used.
Interesting.
That doesn't mean it's safe. I think that statistically it might be the safest.
So what are your guys' thoughts on, I know this has been sensationalized in the movies Ouija and all that other kind of stuff, but there's a perception that if you take the planchette, once asked a question, and look through the oculus of the planchette, that you see things that aren't supposed to be there.
I think that's pure Hollywood.
You think it is? Okay.
I had not heard of that. Not to say that I know everything, obviously, but before that movie, I don't think it was a thing.
Yeah.
If it was a thing, it was somebody joking about it.
But I think some of the things that I would lead credence to is I'd be more believable of a board from the early 1800s. There's boards that have been made from hanging man's trees, lineage, because you get into the possibility of it actually being a haunted item or an item of significance that would give more chances of compared to like a Parker Brothers or Hasbro piece of cardboard that you literally got out with a plastic planchette, compared to a 120-year-old piece of wood that's been hand carved from a hangman's tree or was sanctified by somebody. I mean, there's some levels of how much credence do you give it, or your opportunities for something to be more plausible to me is, the equipment. It's no different than how good is your audio recorder. Is it $20 off of Amazon? Is it a $250 audio recorder with, analog mics? The better equipment, the better opportunities you might have, I think, personally.
I just have to say, challenge accepted. I'm going to go find a hangman's tree and make a Ouija board.
Most of them have been kept down by now. But you can still find the boards.
So let's talk a little bit about our personal experience with Ouija boards. And we'll start at this end and work our way down to Larry.
Okay. Save the best for last.
One, have you ever used a spirit Ouija board? I'm going to use spirit board because to me, that's an encompassing term. Have you ever used a spirit board? What was your first use of a spirit board? And overall, what kind of experience have you had from it?
Can I ask a question? Can you guys wave your arms up in the air again real fast?
I haven't gone higher than this.
I saw a white shadow on the wall up there go crazy when you were first talking about it.
Yeah.
Does that help?
No, it doesn't, because I don't see it. Oh, yeah, fuck you, JD.
Okay.
So, my
personal
personal experience goes back to when OG was probably in high school. I was in middle school. At a birthday party, they broke out a Ouija board from Parker Brothers. I still, to this day, think we had answers coming across the board. I felt like somebody was pushing it.
How many people did you have using it?
At the time, it was 2 people at a time. We rotated because there's probably about 6 or 7 of us. We had the lights flicker while we're using it. Could have been somebody screwing with us. At that point in time, it was a birthday party thing late.
Sure.
When I was on it, I felt like somebody was pushing the planchette, not me moving, not it freely moving to the questions. But it did answer some, but it's like a fortune teller, telling you your fortune and gives you some vague answer that could be interpreted like 15 million ways. Could have been something. Possibly. We didn't run into, there's a certain name that pops up a lot of times. We did not have that happen. But we're talking, this was late 80s. So that name wasn't as well known.
Sure.
So.
Okay, so my first experience with the Ouija board or spirit board, can't remember which place it was. Larry, wake up. For whatever reason, it's not that I was afraid of them. It's not that I had any fear of using them. And it's not that they weren't around, available for me. But I didn't use them for years. I didn't touch them for years until 3 or 4 years ago. And I think it was at Garnett. Justin or somebody pulled one out. I used them at Malvern before that time, but so I don't know exactly which was the first experience, but I now own several different types going back to the 1970s or no 1940s, and I've used them, and like you. The experiences I've had of the planchette moving, for me anyways, it didn't feel like the other person was moving it, but it didn't feel like I was moving it. It felt like it was being pulled away from me. It felt like it was being pulled towards where it was going rather than being pushed by me or the other person using it. And I've only ever done it where it was just me and one other person.
Yeah.
I'll get into my thoughts on overall the use of them in the paranormal community in a bit, but that's my experience with them. I've used a few different iterations of them, from a Ouija board to a Hasco spirit board from the 1940s to a Jesus board. The Holy Spirit board is actually what it's called. Really only because of physical reasons with the board of the pads not being mobile enough to move across the boards. I've only had experiences with one because the other 2 need repair. But I don't think it was me or the other person moving them, because it felt like it was being pulled. I will get into my thoughts on the idea of the spirit using you to move them versus the thing moving them. But let's move on to Dave and his experiences with them.
What I can remember, which is very, very vague. It was the only time I can really remember is me and my sister down in the basement in our split level home in Martin City.
1900s.
It was in the early 1970s. We were using this. Is the second house we lived in. Not the
Did you
first
cut
one.
the tree down yourself
Huh?
to make the Ouija board?
Oh, okay.
I'm just fucking with you.
Okay, so anyway, I truly believed we were manipulated. We were kids. We were trying to get the end. We were trying to scare each other. So I do not believe there was any power source to move that. I think it was my sister and myself that did it. And I know I was pushing it. I remember she goes, "You're pushing." Like, no, I'm not. Yeah, I was. So that's my experience with it. Yeah.
Larry, what's your first Ouija board experience?
I was wondering why she looked like she doo-dooed herself with that punched out back. The first experience that I ever had with a Ouija board, I have to admit, was at the Garnett house with Rob.
Yeah.
So, while we were at the Garnett house, Jason had the idea to pull out the Ouija board, and several of us had moved in and out, whatnot, of working it together. And for some reason, Rob and I, and it wasn't just me and Rob, it was Rob and whoever was working it, had the experiences where it immediately interacted. And I know it wasn't me because when I touch a Ouija board, I do this, where I barely touch it, and he was barely touching it, but it was moving and answering questions to what he had asked and what I had asked. And to me, that was the first experience that I ever had that I was like, holy crap, like this might actually be something interacting with us.
Or possessing you. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. So that's all I have to say about that. But it's not the only time that I've experienced the Ouija board since then. Like I said.
So I have a question. Do you think the Ouija board, spirit board, is a better tool than, say, a flashlight, person?
I didn't say that it was a better tool. I said statistically it might be safer. And I'll get into my reasons why. But I want to expand on Larry's interactions with it because despite what happened and despite what we revealed in that hallway in Malvern Manor with your mumbling when you're tired or you're really scared,
or both,
that board was doing a lot, and you guys were blindfolded.
Yeah, I had
no idea. We were doing blindfolded Ouija board sessions. So yeah, you could say that when you're blinded and you have and you could kind of picture where things might be, and yeah, you could say that you were moving around, but both people were blinded. You were on the top side of the board. Jesse was on the bottom side of the board, and I was filming.
What do you mean by top side of the board?
So you were. I don't remember. You were on. So the board was turned around where it was,
or facing the other guy can read it.
Yeah. So it was up. The letters were upside down to you.
All right, I didn't know that.
Because you're blindfolded.
Yeah, exactly. And in the dark.
I can't say that it was spelling things out. But we were asking, at times we were asking specific questions to give initials and dates and other things, and it was doing it.
Really?
When you guys were blindfolded.
I don't remember that.
But whether you know what it spelled out and did, you experienced that blindfolded Ouija board session.
Yeah.
And yeah, you were terrified, clearly. But what did you think of that moment of not knowing what it was doing?
In the moment, being blindfolded and my butthole feeling so tight that I've never experienced that before in my life, I don't really know how to explain how I felt other than that I was terrified. I didn't know that it was spelling out, because, I mean, in all honesty, you were the one that was filming. You released that evidence. You reviewed it and all that kind of stuff.
We took turns. I don't remember who else was filming. I was sitting there blindfolded too. Somebody else was filming.
But I don't recall it actually answering questions. So if you
so in the moment, I wasn't reading out what it was spelling. Okay. We were just filming what it was doing so we can look back at it later. Yeah,
and you having reviewed the evidence, that fascinates me because I know when we were at the Whiteface house, you were asking specific questions while you and I were not manipulating, but accessing the Ouija board, and it was answering those questions in a specific manner. Like, we asked, whose house is this? And it spelled out Whiteface. That, to me, I know I wasn't moving it, and I'm 100% sure you weren't moving it.
I wasn't.
That, to me, was like, son of a bitch. Like, maybe we shouldn't be in this house.
It spelled out Matt's name.
It spelled out Matt's name, who was another investigator with us.
Who was going to be in the basement and stuff like that.
That
was the only time I've ever done it where it was spelling out full words.
Yeah.
There's been times where it would give me a number or a yes or a no or initials. There's been times where things were happening where it made me wonder if the spirits knew how to spell, because I think that's a real thing. If you're interacting with a spirit that doesn't know how to spell, they might be doing whatever. This was the only time where it was specifically spelling everything out exactly.
And it literally spelled out Whiteface.
There's no doubt in your mind it wasn't the other guy manipulating the.
I don't think it was Larry.
No. So when I hold,
Larry,
it was me and Larry.
It's always questionable when it's Larry.
But
but he can't spell.
I barely touch. Like, I tap and I hover over the planchette.
But you don't think any vibration of your finger touches.
No.
So I can say from experience with that specific, and the other, and I'm not the most experienced with these boards, but I feel like when you're sitting there with your finger, I always go with either one or two fingers, and I kind of move it around and change it around as we go. There is a big difference in my mind from what I've experienced to the feeling of that planchette being pulled in a direction rather than being pushed in a direction. Yeah. I can also say, and this is to add to your point of it, I've felt sensations in my hand that feel like something is in my hand.
Yeah. That's what I felt at my face.
Even if I know that I'm not pushing it, I don't necessarily feel like something took over my hand, but I've had the feeling of electricity in my hand while doing the Ouija board session.
Okay.
But you admit that the session that we did at the Whiteface house was extraordinary.
Yeah, like I said, that's the only time I've ever done it where it specifically spelled out actual names and words.
Yeah. It threw me for a loop. I'm not gonna lie. Because at first I thought I even mentioned to you, I was like, "Quit moving it! Like, are you moving this?" And I don't know how to explain it. That's all I have to go.
Interesting. Well, I'm definitely not saying that's a bullshit story, but
you didn't catch it on film.
Well, most definitely. Well, they probably did.
You were filming.
We may have filmed.
Yeah. But I'm just saying that's to me, you've kind of opened my eyes a little bit, which I hate to admit at my age, being the old guy, that it's possible that you weren't doing it.
So can I bring my Ouija board to the Sally house?
Absolutely not.
You can have my whole spirit board.
I have a spirit board. It's a glow in the dark one too. Yeah. So
interesting.
Why don't you use it at your place on Alive?
I brought this up because I had a long, drawn out explanation on a post that I made as to let me preface this. I feel that the use of a spirit board comes down to the individual using it. There is something to say about if you are specifically asking a spirit to use your body to move the planchette. But I can also say that in the times that I've done a spirit board, I did not ask for that. We just sat down, we put our hands on the board and asked questions. That's not me giving permission for a spirit to use my body to move the planchette.
So do you think that someone that is more susceptible to paranormal activity, that, like, so say a medium,
Yeah.
do you think they're more inclined to have
Potentially.
interaction?
Potentially.
better results.
And overall, my argument on it takes that into an account, but that's not the case for my argument. I think that anything we do in the paranormal field comes down to the person doing it and not what's there. I think it's if you want to put a term on it, the success rate of paranormal activity interaction for an individual comes down to that individual, not what's going on in the place you're at.
So, have you ever? I know it's probably not the case of personal experience, but besides like movies or television shows, have you ever witnessed a story or an example of someone where it moved on its own?
Okay, so I will let me get through my argument on the statistics of this, and then we could discuss more, because it does include an example of that.
Okay.
It's my experience with people, clients that have had a bad experience with the Ouija board, and only my experience with dealing with those clients, that every client that I've interacted with that had a bad experience with Ouija boards were meth heads and other drug addicts. I'm not saying that that's everybody. I'm saying that's my experience with them. So I don't have an overall view on everybody that has had a bad experience with the Ouija board. But the one specific case where the person and the family had a very bad experience with the Ouija board, we have them on tape admitting that they sold meth. So I can't take into account anything that they had. Anyways, I don't think that has to do with the overall interaction. And it's not a knock on my case as to why it may be the safest use of paranormal equipment. So, at any given time in the United States, there are approximately 30,000 paranormal investigators. And I base that on there are around 3,000 paranormal teams active in the United States at any one time. And I generously estimated that there are 10 investigators on each paranormal team. And then you can include individuals, and I think that the generous 10 per team includes that. Overall, there's about 30,000 people that actively investigate the paranormal as a team or individual at any given time, and that doesn't take into account an individual that's just interested doing it in their own home. Even if you add that in, it's a big number, but it's not a huge number.
Yeah.
Ouija boards, just Ouija boards, from the time that Parker Brothers started them, over 10 million of those sold.
Wow. I did not know that.
Conservative estimate of the number of people that have used a single Ouija board in their lifetime, I would estimate it as close to 100 million or not more.
So 10
Single use. I'm talking about you're just sitting down with your friends, 7 years old, and you use it.
That's a
right?
big number.
You're not trying to do anything. I'd say that that's conservative. 100 million people over the lifetime of a 100-year board game of people sitting down and using them.
And that's just since the conception of the
Ouija board. You can't
board,
say
yeah.
you can say that a few million probably messed with some other form of a board outside of that. Who knows? But that number of 100 million is an easy number to estimate. So let's say, just for argument's sake, I have no real numbers on this, but 1,000 people have had a really bad experience with the Ouija board. That's 0.00001% of the number of people that used a Ouija board.
Yeah.
If you had 10,000 bad experiences with the Ouija board, that's
0.001.
0.0001% of the entirety of people that used a Ouija board. If you had 100,000 people that had a really bad experience with the Ouija board, that's 0.001% of every person that used a Ouija board.
And for layman's terms, that's 1 out of 1,000.
Yeah. So
Is
I can't say that there aren't bad.
I don't know why I looked
I
at
can't
you.
say that there
I'm sorry.
are not bad experiences with the Ouija board. My argument is it's the individual that uses it. I can tell you, and it's anecdotal, that based on just paranormal investigation without a Ouija board, just going out and doing an EVP session or just going out and checking out haunted places, I've known so many people that have had a bad experience that I feel that number, that percentage, has to be higher than 100,000 people having a really bad experience with the Ouija board.
Fair.
So, yes, I think that a Ouija board can be a bad thing for the individual person. And it's all anecdotal, right? It's all anecdotal. But I don't think it's any worse than anything else that anybody does when they're trying to interact with the other side. Because I know people that have been possessed. I know people that have been ripped, torn up, thrown out of buildings, had crazy shit happen to them. They didn't use a Ouija board.
You're talking about
Well, I mean,
the church in the middle.
well,
of
I mean that's part of it.
Just
But
in
I've known
general.
people beyond that, and
Sally House.
I've seen people be, claim to be possessed and acting weird,
Bobby Mackey.
and things happen, and even like Malvern Manor and other places. And
So I have an instance of
I
that.
just feel statistically, one, I don't know if there's an actual, if you broke it down to numbers, if there's an actual. I saw something by you, Larry.
He just blew
I
smoke.
believe
Oh,
smoke.
okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can scientifically take the numbers of the other investigation tactics and really compare it, because the use of a spirit board is so much higher. But I feel like, just based on my interactions and the overall numbers, that you have to be careful doing all of this no matter what you're doing. I can't say that it's the safest thing for you to do, but I feel like if you broke down the numbers, the fear of a Ouija board is irrational based on the other stuff that has happened to people that won't even touch a Ouija board, and the instances and the statistics of it happening because of Hollywood and how the fear of it has infected everything.
So I have sorry, Jimmy.
That can't take away somebody that has had a bad experience with a Ouija board. I can't say, oh, that didn't happen to you, but I can say that 100,000 people plus you used it, and you're the only one that had a bad experience. Just throw out numbers. 1,000 people sat in Waverly Hills and did an EVP session, and one person had a bad experience. That is a statistic, a much larger number than the people that had a bad experience with the Ouija board.
So I have several questions. One is, first, why the fuck did you bring up Waverly Hills?
It was just something that everybody knows.
Okay, fair enough, because that kind of freaked me out for a second. Because that's one of the
Because
investigations.
I could have mentioned a place in Kansas City, but not everybody might know, or
Yeah.
watching might know that.
That's one of the investigations we're planning for this year. So
We'd like to, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so that just freaked me out a little bit. Not gonna lie. Second of all, can you say that stigma 100 years from now may be associated with like the voice recorder in today's day and age?
Maybe. I will also say
I thought you were going to go Topa on that.
No,
that
People believe that's why it's happening.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
a group of 11-year-olds sitting around and using a Ouija board has something scary happen could be called a negative experience to them, but it wouldn't be called a negative experience for somebody experienced in the paranormal field doing a Ouija board session. So I feel that even cuts down the numbers of bad experiences with the Ouija board even more.
That's fair.
In my mind, and because I've been doing this for so long and I've experienced so much, there's a big difference between somebody using something that is not experienced in the paranormal field and having an experience and how they would describe it versus somebody who's experienced in the paranormal field having the same experience and describing it to somebody.
So I would relate that, if you don't mind me interrupting, with the orb phenomenon.
Sure.
So people taking a digital compact camera on a paranormal tour or a place they want to experience and taking pictures and seeing thousands of orbs, and they're not experienced and don't know the logistics of what and how that camera acts in the environment they're in, and associating that as a threat or paranormal, when in all honesty it's probably dust or a bug or something. That's what I'm getting from what you're trying to explain right now. Is that fair?
I mean, it's close, but it's not. So there's a big difference. I don't think that there's anybody that think that orbs are evil.
Yeah.
No.
So when you think about the aspect of something happening to you, I think it's different.
But logistically, it's the same type of occurrence.
No.
Not evil in necessity.
No, because somebody that understands taking a photo and how dust reflects to you, that's what's the term? That's
Pareidolia? Objective.
You can understand that, and you can understand that there are particles floating around in the space that's reflecting. When you're dealing with the Ouija board, that's subjective because you don't understand what you might be interacting with. You can't see it. There's nothing to say that there's something there.
Fair. I that makes total sense to me now.
This is where I'm going to hop in.
Okay.
Caveat. The spirit board, Ouija board, whether it be man-made topa or whatever, there is correlation to a known name that supposedly is of a demon.
You don't say that.
Why are we... If I wanted to
Because we're
say the
dumbass.
name, I would have said the name. It is one of the few items that is now nationwide, and it could be self-induced people forcing that name to pop up. But you don't have that with EVPs. You don't have that with your flashlight. You don't have that with REM pods. You don't have that even with spirit boxes. So this is where you're peeing on an electric fence. 99.9% of the time you can pee on it, you're fine. It's that 1% that tags you, and then you're not going to do it again.
I agree with you.
That would be my only caveat, because
So-
it may
yeah.
be man-made.
So I agree with you in principle because it and how it relates to the paranormal field and how people do it. I would make the argument that a large, if not the high-end percentage of TikTok videos, YouTube videos of people doing that and getting are not paranormal investigators that would be doing an EVP session. They are people in I would go back to my numbers of people that have experience with using a spirit board versus having experience with using a REM pod.
So I look at it as the spirit board has physical properties that can spell that out, as opposed to a voice recorder where those physical properties.
What's the box that throws up words?
Spirit box.
No, not
Oh,
spirit
you're talking
box.
about the obelisk.
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 So what's the difference between that and I can't remember what it was, but it's where you put two pencils across from each other and they have letters. I don't remember what that was.
Yeah,
but that was also an internet sensation that grew. That was mostly beyond the paranormal community.
It came out with that movie several years ago where they investigated the haunted like stage auditorium where that was part of the movie.
Yeah,
and it was Johnny, I think, was the name of the entity. But I look at it as the spirit board has specific parameters, like it has the letters associated with it.
I mean, he's right on the Ovilus, and
I agree with him. I'm just saying that
even not the Ovilus set aside, there are devices that are completely random and can completely spell out certain things based on a reading of an EVP.
Yeah,
not an EVP, an EMF.
Yeah.
Level. That is not like a word bank that spits something out. I want to make sure, and not that you don't understand it,
Yeah.
but I want to make sure and express that I don't think that the use of a Ouija board can't be bad. I think that the Ouija board's got a bad name because of the level and the scope of the way it's been used over its lifetime versus any other device we've ever used within the paranormal field. The only other thing that I can think that's comparable that we don't actually use anymore is table tipping.
what's table tipping?
The level of use of table tipping throughout history is the only thing that's comparable in the numbers of use. I don't, as far as I know, there isn't any negative connotation to table tipping other than the religious saying it's demonic work, which they think.
So how does
if they're going to have that view, they think anything is demonic work. So I preface this with the whole idea that it's the individual. So anything that individual does could be bad. I think that the fear over a Ouija board, you can set aside. You can't set it aside, but there is something to say. You are inviting. If you invite something to manipulate your body, you are inviting that in compared to an EVP session where you're not. But I don't think that makes
it itself.
I think that only bolsters my argument that it's the individual rather than the use of the board.
And then what's
I think there's something to that.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
I would say, not like it.
I would say
talked about.
Using your own word, that's very possible.
Yeah, plausible.
Yeah.
It's if you're using a Hasbro, you've just bought out of Walmart versus using 1800 or 1920 board, you have more plausibility with an older. To me,
Yeah.
Not saying that you can't get something with a new one.
In a rebuttal that's an agreement in it, but for a different reason. I would say that board has other reasons why it might be a risk to use it.
Yeah.
Because of what may have been done in intention with that board by the individuals using it, not the board itself.
I mean, it also goes saying, like, when you're investigating a house, if you investigate a house that was built in 2020 versus something that was built in the 1800s, there's connotations of how old the board is versus where you're at versus the people you're doing it. It's the stacking of the deck of, do you get closer to something bad or plausible versus being extremely safe? Like us setting a voice recorder out here, the odds of us picking up something besides a laughing dog are pretty slim. But go to one of the cemeteries that 1700s further on, you might get something. And then same with the Ouija board. A really old Ouija board here may not pick anything up. but a brand new Ouija board in a certain cemetery that dates back to the 1700s may pick something up. I just, context of how you're using it, who you're using it with also. And there's some people, fair chum, he has a tendency to attract things. I mean, there may be, you get the right combination of people and that. It's one of the, and again, like you said, it's one of the oldest known devices used in communication next to table tipping. So there is a lot of stuff that's built up over time and bad connotation, because there's a lot of bad publicity on it for a while there,
There still is.
Yeah. But like I said, it's one of the few ones that I know that there's a name tied to it that does show it, which could in itself be influence itself to generate that name, because people, oh no, the minute you start going to those letters, but they're a fairly easy letter combination.
Sure. And a long time ago, I came to the realization that I am in no position to judge somebody else for how they act in this field, how they investigate, how they do things in the paranormal world, because nobody has the answers. Nobody has the answers. People have what they're comfortable with. They're comfortable with how they do things or how other people around them do things. But that doesn't mean they know what they're doing. You can have the most effective psychic. They might know, but they can't prove to you that they know. So in effect, they don't know.
Yeah. I just follow the rule of don't be an asshole while you're investigating.
Yeah. So how do you associate with spirit boards and Ouija boards?
Sorry.
So how do you associate with spirit boards and Ouija boards a negative experience? So someone could come across and get the word, or
why do we keep on saying that?
I don't think we should be afraid of that word.
I shouldn't think we.
Well, my wife just.
How do you associate that with a negative experience?
It's not just the name; it's what follows it.
There are, from my experience, there are several different ways to utilize a spirit board. You can set a planchette on that and not touch it and see what what it might do. You can set a planchette on it and put your hand on it and somebody else's hand on it and just sit there and wait for what it might do. There's also the technique of two people put their hands on there and you take it and you move it back and forth and then you stop. You're in essence showing what might be there, how it works. But you are, in a way, there are people in a way that constantly move it and then kind of stop and see what happens. I think that a lot of the spelling of that is people moving it around and taking that technique and it cat.
Yeah.
Okay.
It
I'm
is
hoping it's cat.
Yeah. That doesn't mean it's not anything, but
so there's also,
I think the hype came from somewhere and it was bolstered by the idea of it, and I don't know.
Because to me, a negative experience would be asking the planchette to move with nobody touching it and then motherfucking lighting on fire.
I would say that
I'm just saying.
Statistically, and I don't know the numbers when it comes to that name and how often it comes out.
0.00000.
I would say that statistically, the number of people that have claimed, or let's say they're all telling the truth, the number of people that have had that happen compared to the number of people have had something bad happen when that happens is as low as the number of people that have had a bad experience with the Ouija board.
I would agree with that.
Compared to the number of people that have used it.
I think it's more of a
interpretation.
Well, yeah, it's more of a when they see that, because there's connotations that usually follows, like if you keep on talking, you get into a Mothman effect, where it starts talking about things in a relatively quick succession, and then when that does happen, whether they're bad or not. It's the fact that something that you've now communicated to was able to see something in your future, which generally will freak most people out. I mean, that's good, bad, or indifferent.
So are you saying that Indrid Cole, the Mothman, was some sort of negative entity in regards to foreshadowing of what was to come? Or so?
Well, the people on the bridge probably would say it was a negative.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
But no, I mean, I
Well,
think
it's no more as a harbinger of doom.
Yeah.
Because every time, supposedly, this
but just how many boxes
Mothman
are we
is
going to throw it
seeing
in?
something happen.
Yeah, no, I would.
But the fact that it was, well, I mean, the person that talked to it on the phone and it was able to describe what was in his pocket and other things.
That's fucked up.
Yeah, no, it
Negative is also very relative.
yes, I mean,
Yes.
that's not necessarily negative that he has the ability to see what you immediate future or what's in your pocket or that just may be the realm of the dimension that it's in because like there's theories on that like we live in a linear time.
Yeah.
So, we age. There's it's a cat. There are other
That was
possible
a cat.
creatures that may not live. They live in the time space, not the physical space. So they see everything that happens in one spot. So they're omnipotent of that area. They can see the past, the future. It's all relative to them, but
Yeah.
they can't move
Yeah.
per se. So but if you
The movie actually explained that very well, which
Yeah.
was not. So the character in the Mothman prophecy movies was mirroring a real person, but not a real person that was in. That person was not actually involved with the events that
No.
happened in Point Pleasant.
He was-
But what he said and how he described it is actually very applicable in my mind. He described it as a window washer could see down the road and see something that would happen that somebody on the ground could not see.
I think the
That doesn't denote that person that saw that is evil because he has a different perspective. That character in that movie, The Mothman Prophecies, was modeled after John Keel. And John Keel had this perspective that as far as the things that we are interacting and what might be evil and what might not be evil, because the perspective of the thing might not see it the same way that we do, it's scary. But that doesn't mean that thing caused it. It just means that it sees what might happen, but that doesn't mean that it knows it might happen. It just means that it saw something and it's relaying to something it ran into on the side of the road for whatever reason. It might not be a motive behind any of it.
Yeah, because you could say the same thing for who was the angel that came to Mary and said that you're gonna have this child and whatnot. She could have perceived that as evil, as opposed to
the easiest one out there is the Grim Reaper. Everybody looks at the Grim Reaper as this ominous
because he
figure.
brings death.
But, well, no, he doesn't bring death. He reaps the souls. He doesn't kill people. He merely takes the souls once they've been killed and transports them. So he gets a bad rep.
But if you see the Grim Reaper, that means you're gonna
There's a
possibly die.
Yeah, but that's not because of him. That's because he's there because he has been called upon. That's that connotation of
True.
is he evil for doing his job, or are you
Yes.
associating the evilness of it? And that's how you. It's
I
all
think
on how you put.
That's
you look
fair.
at it like it's a darkness because when you think of death, you think of darkness, right? You
Yeah.
think, okay, it's over. You're done. No matter what your religious beliefs are, or your philosophy on life, you see death coming, you think darkness. So obviously, you see something like, oh crap, here it comes. I, for one, I'm going to go out like I came in, crying, kicking, and screaming. I mean, I came in the world. That's how I'm going out in this world. So
Big Dick Harry Stamper.
so I'm just, but yeah, I mean, that's how you get that.
Yeah,
And
no.
whether it's evil or not, but
Yeah.
death scares people.
Mothman and Point Pleasant and what happened there has a much longer conversation
I agree.
with
Then Ouija boards.
Yeah.
we on our show, my show in the past, we had a guy on that talked about an article within a specific magazine distributed to the armed forces that pretty much explained a lot of it and what was going on there. But that doesn't mean that nothing happened there. But it all kind of circles back. And it does correlate in that the perspective and idea of what is spirit board and how it works is relative to the individual using it and not the overall paranormal community and the world view on it. I think that personally that people shouldn't be afraid to use it unless they feel scared to use it, because I always trust my gut. So if you don't want to use it, don't do it.
Absolutely.
But if you want to use it, don't worry about being judged by other people to use it, because I think you're being judged unfairly.
I don't trust my gut because it makes bad noises and smells. I'm just
because it's all about the individual using it in my mind.
It's a fair statement.
And that's always worked for me.
That's good.
I agree with you. I agree. And the only thing I'd say, if you're doing anything, in my opinion, and that's all it is in my opinion, if you're going to go do an investigation on a house, an area, whatever, I just say use common sense. Go through your instincts. If you think that whatever works for you, works for you. But I say show respect.
Oh yeah. Always, if you want to use a Ouija board and you are not at a place that is your place, if you're helping a client or you're going to investigate a location, talk to the person that owns the place or runs the place before you do anything, even outside of Ouija boards.
So would you also recommend that be in the right state of mind?
Well, sure. I just want to finish on my point of that.
Sorry.
I'm good friends with Josh Hurd that owns Malvern Manor. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard stories of people that have gone in there that their intention was to open a Dybbuk box and release a spirit in there. Or to do this, or to do that, or to summon this. How do you feel okay with doing that stuff at a place that you don't own? If you can't respect that, then what are you doing? I mean, I would say that don't do anything in a place.
Do you want to do it in your own house?
But that's not true, because if you're willing to do it in your own, if you're willing to do it somewhere else, you might do it in your own house.
Well, I think lack of common sense would be of that person is someone I wouldn't want to be.
I think what he's saying is respect people's.
But it's hard,
spaces.
right? Because if I make the comparison that an EVP session could, because there is a possibility that an EVP session could release something because it's your intention. You're going to a place like Malvern Manor and you're going to do an EVP session and they don't have a problem with it. But there are taboo things. So just talk to. Maybe it's not even a place you're going to book and pay to go investigate. I would say it's more important, especially if you're working with a person's home or
if it's a personal residence, you double check everything.
And I have
even if you're going to a booked place, you should cover what all you want to do and make sure that they are okay with everything.
Yeah.
Which 99% of the time they're going to be okay with it, but you should
respect their authority.
Respect what they say. Like they might say no open flames.
Yeah.
I mean that's pretty common because they want you to burn the thing down.
And I have to foreshadow that with.
You're burning something down.
If you go up because people have done a certain thing, don't bring one of the opened Dybbuk boxes home with you.
I have one on my shelf.
I had to throw mine away.
Oh, yeah?
Because someone requested that I do that because of shit that was happening.
With all the stuff that was happening to you, I think that was probably a smart move. But and again, that's just the old man in me.
That was just looking out
for the.
It could be the ashes in your closet, but you know.
Did I ever tell you about that?
Yes.
So, Anyway, I think
ashes in
we
the closet.
finished this off by just going with common sense and respect.
Yeah.
Put Jason
We
out of
didn't
there
have
when he
ashes.
opened them.
Yeah. Again,
Ask-
common sense.
Well, we didn't open them that day because they were already opened, right? We just
Yeah, it
No,
makes it
yeah,
so
they were
much
already
better.
open. And we can talk about that later. To round out the spirit box or spirit board,
Board.
You got it.
Thing, but
You're on it.
spirit board sessions and the use of them. Use your own judgment. Don't give in to the idea of fear around them if you're interested in it, because anything that we do in the paranormal field could bring a negative experience, and I don't think that spirit boards are any more likely to do so.
Yeah, and I look at it as, to close this out, I have to say, look at it like anything else in this world and in your life. Be willing to deal with the consequences.
How about the consequences?
Consequences of your
There's the
actions.
consequences.
Be willing to deal with the consequences of your actions, whether or not you believe in them or not. So, thank you guys for joining in on this
Yeah.
episode. I hope you learned a little bit of something.
Be respectful. Be safe.
Until next time.
Be safe.